Hey, Cookies here. Time to talk about Holy Priest in Mythic Plus. Starting off with the talents, the first row that is going to see any kind of change whatsoever, and this is like the default build that you'll usually be running in Mythic Plus, is going to be this row right here with Binding Heals and Guardian Angel. You're not going to run Afterlife because it's more of like a raid thing. But between Binding Heals and Guardian Angel, basically, you run Binding Heals when you feel like you need more self-healing. So if you find yourself dying on bosses, like the best example I can give is like Plaguefall, where there's bosses that do heavy AoE damage, Sanguine Depths, where there's also bosses that do heavy AoE damage to the entire group. Those are dungeons where you might consider running something like Binding Heals to help just with the overall amount of healing that's needed to beat those bosses on like Tyrannical Weeks and stuff. The next row that you'll see some switches around is this row right here. All three of these talents are viable, so you can run whichever one you like. Psychic Voice will give you a good AoE way to interrupt things. So I usually take this talent if we have, like, say, 2 ranged DPS and we don't have enough like melee kicks or something, and we just need more ways to interrupt mobs. I'll usually take Psychic Voice. I take Censure for like single target stuns if I find it useful to, if we're in a dungeon where there's mobs that cast something that can't be normally interrupted and instead they need to be interrupted with a stun or some kind of crowd control, then this can be really good. And then Shining Force is good for weeks like Sanguine or Necrotic, things where your tank is going to have to kite and you need to somehow, displace the mobs or move them in some way to prevent things, from extending the duration of how long the key takes. The next row where you're going to see any kind of difference is the last row. You're going to pick between Light of the Naru and Apotheosis. You should default to Apotheosis, but if you notice that you're not pressing the button enough, and we're going to talk about this a little later in the video in the gameplay section of how to actually use it, because I feel like a lot of people don't really know how to use this cooldown, so they'll just not press it. If you find yourself not pressing it whatsoever, or you're just starting out on Holy Priest and you want to just have one less button to worry about, then I would run Light of the Naru, because it's basically just like a weakened version of Apotheosis, but it's always active because it's a passive effect, rather than a much stronger version that you can activate at your own time and kind of choose when you get this big benefit of healing and even damage. So default to Apotheosis, run Light of the Naru if you find yourself not being able to utilize Apotheosis, or if you just want one less button to worry about for now, and you can always switch to Apotheosis later and kind of fit it into your gameplay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the Covenants and Legendaries, and this is where I'm going to pull up Subcreation, which I used on the last video. I'm going to use this as our resource tool for the Mythic Plus series, since for the rating series we were using Warcraft logs. So this is subcreation.net, and it basically just compiles a lot of log data and gives us a very digestible format of seeing it. So Covenants and Legendaries. As you can see up here, Kyrian is by far the most popular and overwhelmingly dominant covenant for Holy Priest, and that is because it just increases our damage so substantially. So if you want to increase your damage and help the group deal damage, then Kyrian is going to be your go-to. Other than that, all the covenants are totally viable. You can see the max key that has been recorded so far with these covenants. There's Night Fae players who have done plus 27 keys. And the highest key right now is a plus 28. Necrolord has done a plus 28, and Venthyr has done a plus 25. So Venthyr lacking behind a little bit, but really all of these covenants are totally viable, and unless you're pushing past 25s, then it really doesn't matter what covenant you play. Kyrian is the best. The other three have mixed, upsides and downsides. I'm not going to go over each of them. Basically, you pick Kyrian or you pick whatever you want. That's the best way to think about it. As far as legendaries go, these are the usual legendary setups you're going to see. You can kind of ignore the Covenant-specific legendary. So the main legendaries here are going to be Flash Concentration. That's what you should default to as your typical healing legendary. If you want to do more damage as a Holy Priest and you don't feel the need to have Flash Concentration, then you can run something like Twins of the Sun Priest is really good. And then also for another option of healing legendary, and also it's kind of like I guess we could call it a hybrid legendary at this point. So if you want a little bit of both, something that gives you a benefit towards damage and towards increasing your healing, then people are starting to run Harmonious Apparatus quite a bit. because it interacts with our 4-piece, which basically the way that it works is it'll kind of be a mixed description here because I'll explain the tier bonus later. But what this does is add more holy word affecting spells to your toolkit so that your tier piece or your 4-piece is affecting these spells, and you can basically, because you get Circle of Healing, so you can have like a bigger Circle of Healing every time you press a holy word. You could have a bigger Prayer of Mending that's actually worth pressing, because a lot of time in Mythic Plus, Prayer of Mending isn't worth pressing, but if you're running Harmonious Apparatus, it definitely is. And then lastly, but certainly not least, Holy Fire, which is a very, very good spell and is kind of the main reason why people are running this legendary in Mythic Plus, and it is doing so well, is because you can get bigger Holy Fires to do more damage and increase, your overall DPS throughout the dungeon. So the next thing is going to be Soulbinds and Conduits. So for the Soulbinds, you can kind of see them right here. For Kyrian, you should be defaulting to Mechanicos because it obviously helps with our damage even further because it lowers the cooldown on Boon significantly. For Night Fae, you should default to Dreamweaver. This just gives us the overall kind of best stat weights and the biggest healing increase. It also gives us a cheat death, which is very, very important in Mythic Plus as a Holy Priest. Necrolord, you should default to a Many, and that's because it gives a nice AoE group-wide buff to everybody every time we press our Covenant ability. And then for Venthyr, you should default to Draven. So that's it for the Soulbinds. For the Conduits that are going to be the most important, I will just quickly go over them. We're not going to worry about endurance or finesse conduits because they're all good. So when you have endurance or finesse conduit spots, you can kind of just run whatever you want. And then for potency conduits, the ones that really matter are going to be resonant words, your covenant conduit, whichever one that is. So like your Kyrian covenant conduit or whichever covenant you're playing, that covenant conduit is going to be the best. Resonant words is the most important. And then if you have a tree that for whatever reason has 3 potency slots and you're running 3 potencies, which typically you don't because you run the extra endurance conduit in the Mechanicos tree. But if you are running 3 potency conduits, you can default to running Holy Oration, which is another really good conduit to have to reduce our holy words even further to get more benefits out of our tier piece. So that is it for conduits. Then we're going to talk about stats and trinkets real quick. So for stats, the biggest thing is in Mythic Plus, you're going to avoid as much mastery as you possibly can. Like this set of gear in particular, I have a lot of my mastery gear taken off that I normally wear during raid. And then you basically just get item level. Item level is going to be the most important. And after that, you can really get a nice mix of stats. You can get haste, you can get crit, you can get verse. I would say if you want specifics, try to go for somewhere around above like 20 to 23% haste. And then after that, you can start working your way to like get more crit and versatility. But mastery is still a good stat. So if you're struggling on healing or you just care about your healing and you don't care as much about your damage output in dungeons, then mastery is an amazing stat to take and you should definitely take it. But again, if you're trying to min-max and push keys as far as you can, then dealing damage is very important as a healer, and mastery doesn't give us any kind of benefit to damage while all of the other stats do. So if you're following the cookie cutter kind of do damage in Mythic Plus build, avoid mastery, get item level, get a good amount of haste, and you're good to go. For trinkets, you're going to default to just stat sticks, so you have things like, this will be also on this website, so I'll scroll down until we find them. Be down here. So things like Unbound Changeling, Soul-Letting Ruby, Solea's Secret Technique, the Elegy of Eternals, all of those, anything that gives you a main stat and then a secondary stat as a proc or a active effect is going to be really good. There is one trinket worth mentioning that you really want to pick up if you can, especially for higher keys, which is this right here, the Resonant Reservoir. It is very, very powerful. If I go back in my game, the last key I just ran was a plus 20 DOS, and this is the trinket's damage at the very, very top of my damage done. It did 16% of my overall damage, and I'm sure I didn't min-max it or press it as many times as I could. So it is incredibly, incredibly powerful. So pick this up if you can. It's off of Desagne in the raid, so you can grab it in Heroic, and once Mythic is cross-realm, you could probably even pug Mythic if you need to, or if you're in a guild that's killing Mythic bosses, then there you go, you're good to go. Definitely try to get this trinket. It is a damage trinket, so you can't roll for it unless you roll as Shadow. So when you do that boss, try to remember to switch to Shadow Spec, or ask other people to trade it to you if they get it and don't need it. Alrighty. Now we're going to go over some gameplay. So we're going to go ahead and start off. I'm just going to kind of roll this footage of this key, and then I'll kind of just talk, and then if we have specific things, we'll kind of cut to them, or I'll have them pop up on screen or anything like that. So the first major thing is our tier bonus. How does it affect our gameplay in Mythic Plus? So the two-piece reads that it increases, I'm kind of changing the wording a little bit just to make help hopefully make it make more sense. The two-piece increases the cooldown reduction gained from your next holy word affecting spell by 15 seconds. The four-piece increases the effectiveness of your next holy word affecting spell by 60%. What are holy word affecting spells? So every time we press a holy word, the next holy word affecting spell is going to be increased in both effectiveness and how much cooldown reduction it gives on our holy word of like the corresponding holy word. So the holy word affecting spells are heal, flash heal, prayer of healing, and smite. And then if you're running harmonious apparatus, you get those extras that we talked about earlier. So this means that every time you press any holy word, which your holy words are going to be holy word chastise, holy word serenity, and holy word sanctify. Those are your three holy words. There is also salvation, but we don't run that in Mythic Plus, or shouldn't be, so we don't need to worry about that one. So those three holy words, anytime you press one of those buttons, the next time you press one of these affecting spells, again, heal, flash heal, prayer of healing, or smite, those will do either extra damage or extra healing based on what they do. So if we cast a holy word, for instance, and then I exit out of this because I have a whisper. Going over gameplay. So if you cast a holy word, let's say we press holy word chastise on a mob and stun it. The next time that we press either of heal, flash heal, prayer of healing, or smite, it's going to do something extra. So if we cast heal, it's going to do a really big heal. It's going to like full heal the person when we press it, even if they're like pretty low HP. If we flash heal, same exact thing. It's going to like instantly heal them to full HP. If we press prayer of healing after that holy word chastise, it's going to do big group-wide AoE healing. If we press smite after holy word chastise, it's going to do extra damage. And then basically the way to think about it is, what should we be defaulting to? It's really just what you want. So the way I just described it, you should just be using it on a case by case depending on what you need. The tank needs more healing, you press holy word, and the tank still needs more healing. You should be pressing heal or flash heal, and it will do a nice extra heal to them. Are you on a boss where the whole group is taking damage and everyone's like, say 50% health, and you just press a holy word sanctify and now they're still low HP, still taking damage, and you need more group healing? You should press a prayer of healing. And then if you press a holy word spell and no one's really in need of extra healing, or there's not much going on, just press a smite, and the smite will do extra damage. So that is the easiest way to think about the tier pieces, or the tier set bonus, is press a holy word, and after every time you press a holy word, you press one of the affecting spells that we talked about. Heal, flash heal, prayer of healing, or smite, based on what you need. Alright, so now with the tier bonus stuff out of the way, we're going to talk about our healing rotation. So the easiest way I can break this down is that what I think is we have sustained healing spells, burst healing spells, and then our cooldowns. So we're going to go over each of those. Sustained healing spells are things that you're just going to be kind of using to keep the group steady and stabilize. You're not using them in panic moments. You're using them more as just like the tank's half HP and taking damage. We're going to use some of our sustained healing spells, stuff like that. So sustained healing spells are going to be flash heal and heal. There's really not much else you're going to press here. It's just flash heal and heal. If you're running flash concentration, obviously maintain 5 stacks of your flash concentration buff, and then you would just press heal. And if you don't have 5 stacks of flash concentration, then you should be pressing flash heal. And then we have our burst healing spells. This is what should be used when the group is taking extra damage, or people are in danger of dying, or we're trying to kind of like get ready for a mechanic and need everybody to be full health. This is when we need to press a button, when we need to press the button and it needs to instantly like work and get the group topped up or get the person or player topped up. So burst healing spells are going to basically be our holy word spells. And then the follow-up spell after that has increased effectiveness, like we already talked about with the tier bonus. So holy word spells, this is going to be Holy Word Serenity and Holy Word Sanctify. Those are both burst healing spells. One is single target and one is AoE, so you use them that way accordingly. But if only one person's taking damage and Holy Word Serenity is on cooldown, you can cast a Holy Word Sanctify. You can throw your AoE heal in there as like a single target heal, and that's totally fine. Because then the follow-up spell is also part of our burst heal. So think of it as 2 parts. You press your Holy Word spell, and then the next spell that you press also is going to be another burst heal if we need it. Otherwise, we should just default to Smite and do some extra damage. And then we have our cooldown usage. So our cooldowns are going to be the ones we're going to go over. We'll talk about Symbol of Hope and Guardian Spirit first. So Symbol of Hope is going to be something where you kind of just press it throughout the dungeon. If you don't really know where to press it, or you're not tracking the tank's cooldowns like I am here on Omni CD next to the party frame, then you kind of just press it every time it's up. Just send it on cooldown when you have some free time. Otherwise, what you should be doing is tracking the tank's cooldowns and then using Symbol of Hope every time it's up. And like right here, for instance, I don't press Symbol of Hope at all this whole dungeon, but I should. Like right here is a great example. Everything that the tank has is on cooldown. So if we use Symbol of Hope, we help the tank get back to a more stable state where his cooldowns are available. Which that's kind of the whole goal of Mythic Plus is if your tank is safe, the dungeon is going to be going smoothly and everyone is going to be safe. And then we have Guardian Angel, and very similarly, we should be pressing Guardian Angel typically on the tank whenever they are lacking other defensive cooldowns. So here, I probably wouldn't press it on the tank because I see that he has cooldowns, but as he starts using things and they go on cooldown and he doesn't have anything left, you should be pressing Guardian Angel. And it's if you're running the Guardian Angel talent, sorry, Guardian Spirit is the spell, Guardian Angel is the talent. If you're running the Guardian Angel talent, then you should be pretty much pressing it as much as possible because it's going to be a 1-minute cooldown in most cases, which means you should really just be pressing it every time the tank uses a cooldown and has like a gap between that time and the next cooldown that they use. You should use it in that gap right there. So like here, for instance, I should be, he has meta active now, so I wouldn't press it here. But as soon as this meta expires, I would throw GA on him if I'm playing, more optimally. And then we have Apotheosis. So Apotheosis is going to be our actual like kind of healing cooldown. You should be pressing this when you feel kind of panicked or stressed out, or let's say you use your holy words, you get them all on cooldown, you use the follow-up spells, you follow the rotation to a T, and the group is still taking damage and dying, and now you have no holy words to press, so you have no burst heals available. You press Apotheosis, you get every holy word back, and you get 6 extra burst healing spells to press once again, because you press holy word spells, and then you also get those follow-up spells right after. So use Apotheosis that way. Otherwise, because Apotheosis is such a short cooldown, you can actually use it as a damage cooldown. So for instance, if I go back this way, actually I think I do use it during this boss fight. Yeah, so we use it here, and you can see that I'm mostly just spamming Smite as I press Apotheosis, and it will instantly refresh Holy Word Chastise after like 2 casts of Smite. So it's incredibly powerful for just like hitting bosses with single target. Like you can see my damage right now, and obviously I use Boon, I'm starting to use Boon, but let's say before I use Boon, let's just look at me pressing Apotheosis. So here I press Apotheosis, I'm at 10k damage right now on the boss, like 10k DPS. That's very substantial. So Apotheosis can be a solid DPS cooldown as well if you have nowhere else to use it. Like if you don't feel like you need it for healing, use it for damage on single target, and it's really strong. Or you can even use it for like, on a mob, if there's like a priority target to be killing, you can just spam that target with Smites and Holy Word Chastise. Okay, and then we have Divine Hymn. Divine Hymn, not a very incredibly useful spell, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But you can still use it. It's not going to be like a Tranquility or anything like that, so don't treat it like that. What I usually use Divine Hymn for is like prepping the group for oncoming damage so that they get that nice healing buff, because it increases the healing that everybody receives that's being hit by it for like an extra 10 seconds or something. I don't know the exact time, but I basically use it to kind of preemptively get everybody to full HP a little bit if they're not taking too much damage, and then follow up with like, okay, they're going to take a lot of damage in the next 5 seconds or something. I'll press Divine Hymn, and now when they do take that damage, I'm going to be able to heal it up really quickly because we have that buff rolling from Divine Hymn in the first place. All right, so that is our cooldowns. Now we're going to talk about our damage rotation. So we're going to rewind it to this boss fight and just use this as an example because this is the one I have written down as the good example. So our damage rotation is going to consist of a few things. I'm going to keep it as basic as I can, and then we can go over more advanced stuff like in, healing out loud videos and stuff. The first thing is spell upkeep. This is going to be using Divine Star on cooldown, using Holy Fire and Holy Word Chastise on cooldown, and then after that, you can worry about pressing things like Shadow Word Pain or Shadow Word Death on the target. So again, focus. If you are just getting in to help, like trying to do damage in Mythic Plus, focus this one thing at a time. So the first thing, your first goal should be, I'm just going to kind of keep rewinding this a little bit. So your first goal when you're doing damage as a Holy Priest and learning this rotation is just try to keep Divine Star and Holy Word Chastise on cooldown as much as possible. So Divine Star, Holy Word Chastise, and then you can add Holy Fire when you're comfortable. And then only after that point is when you should start thinking about Shadow Word Pain and Shadow Word Death and Smite and all that stuff. Because that's the stuff that kind of fills the gap between the cooldowns of Divine Star, Holy Fire, and Holy Word Chastise. But again, the most important thing for dealing damage, Divine Star, Holy Word Chastise, Holy Fire. Focus on those three things. Don't worry about the rest. And then as you get more comfortable, you can start applying a Shadow Word Pain to the boss and try to keep it, or mobs if you're, if you're killing like multiple mobs in a pack, you can throw Shadow Word Pains on a couple of them and try to keep it rolling before it falls off. You want to refresh it with a couple seconds left. And then you can also start throwing in Shadow Word Deaths. And then as all that stuff is on cooldown, so you've pressed Divine Star, you've pressed Holy Fire, you've put a dot on the boss, you've pressed Holy Word Chastise, and now you start pressing Smite to fill the gap while those things are coming back off cooldown. So that is the basics of the damage rotation. And now the other thing we'll talk about is how to use Boon of the Ascended. So the first thing is we will talk about how to use Boon with because it has a very good lineup. So you can see here I just got Boon off cooldown, but I'm not pressing it on the boss to deal damage, and that is because right here when dies, you get the cooldown reduction from and it lets you spam Ascended Blast with your Boon, which is like the primary ability that you're going to use that has a short cooldown, has like a 3-second cooldown. So you'll see here when I get I activate Boon, and now I can just spam. I'm like spamming Blast right now, and look at my damage go up. I'm at 9k when I start Boon. We're at 11k. We got disrupted because we had to go in the air. We're at 12k, and now Boon just exploded, and we're sitting casually at 12k DPS as a healer. So being able to spam Ascended Blast is going to be way, way, way better than being able to do both. You shouldn't always line it up with The way I think of it is I only really line it up with to spam Ascended Blast on single target, so basically on bosses. But if it's in a pack and I have Boon up and is spawning, I will still just send it and not worry about it. Because of the AoE damage, it makes Ascended Nova still totally fine. And then we will talk about how to use Boon without because you shouldn't overthink it. So don't try to line up every single Boon with an Just think about it on bosses. So when you're killing bosses, that's when you can try to use Boon with I believe here we use Boon, so I will just let it play. So Boon without is really straightforward, actually. You're going to press Boon, and then should be pressing it here in a moment. And then the goal here, so I press Boon, and you can see this is my Blast cooldown. So we have Ascended Blast and Ascended Nova. Those are the two spells that you get. Ascended Blast replace Smite. Ascended Nova doesn't replace anything. It's just an added button as far as I'm aware. I think it replaces your Boon button, whatever you use to activate Boon. So we press Ascended Blast. The goal here should be pressing Ascended Blast as many times as we possibly can, and then using Ascended Nova, which doesn't have a cooldown, in between the cooldown of Ascended Blast. And the easiest way to do this is it's, depending on your haste levels, it's always going to be 2 Ascended Novas, Blast, 2 Ascended Novas, Blast, 2 Ascended Novas, Blast. And then if you have extra haste, like a Bloodlust or Power Infusion or something like that, then it's going to be 1 Ascended Nova, Blast, 1 Ascended Nova, Blast, Nova, Blast, Nova, Blast. And then if you don't have a lot of haste, you're just on a regular pull like this, as you'll see, I'll let it play out. It is Blast. Should be doing it here. Oh, this is where I'm just spamming Ascended Nova because I was kind of messing around with it and testing when you want to use Ascended Blast versus Ascended Nova. Let me go back to, I think maybe the first poll. Maybe in the first poll we do it. So I want to show you guys there's the default rotation because I don't want you to have to worry about like how many targets you're fighting and stuff. Just focus on the regular rotation of it and then you can do the rest. So here, Blast, and then I do 2 Ascended Novas, Blast, 1 Nova, and this is because I have PI. So now you can see I'm blasting, I'm pressing Nova, Blast, Nova. So I'll go back one more time just to kind of talk through it. So we go in, we're going to activate Boon right away, and Blast, Nova, Nova, Blast, Nova, Blast, Nova, Blast, Nova, Blast, and that's because I have PI. That's why I'm only doing 1 Nova instead of 2. So if you don't have PI, and that's because I'm running the PI legendary, so I just hit it on the Warlock, and then I have PI for myself for the Boon. So that is the idea of Boon. Just keep Blast on cooldown as much as possible, and then when you get in, like really when you're just in Ardenweald and DOS, that's the only time I can think of where Ascended Nova is better than Ascended Blast, because you have like 15 targets that you're hitting or something. But in most situations, you should just, you have like a, there's always like a priority target usually in dungeons in every poll. So you should just target whatever is the most important or healthy and that needs to die. And then you just try to hit as many blasts into it as possible, and then make sure you stand in melee for the Ascended Novas because they do only do a small splash if you're seeing that from the Boon initially. Is the Novas do like a small AoE around you, so you do have to be pretty much in melee with it. The Blast you do not, so if you're like spamming Blast on the boss, then you can stay a little bit in range. Alright, I think that covers everything for Holy Priest, so I hope that was helpful. As far as improving further, we did open a new channel in my community Discord, so stop by there. It is right now it's all public. It might be available only for Patreons eventually, but for now is everybody's chance to get in there and test it out. It's a new channel where I'm just doing like public log and VOD reviews for people. So go in there, take a VOD of you doing a Mythic Plus key after watching this video or before watching the video, and then you can throw the link to your VOD or log in there and I will review it for you and chat with you about how to improve further. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good one.